Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's class, I'm covering a topic for which I have been receiving multiple requests recently. I think that's because my one of my previous videos has picked up, and in that I have touched upon the same thing. So now students are curious to know more. I linked that previous video in the description box below. In that video, I had discussed that there are two different types of SAQs in IB. One is study based SAQ and the other is concept or theory based SAQ. Now, students want me to explain this distinction more explicitly and in more detail. So, that is what I'll be doing today. In the previous video, I had taken a topic from BLOA. I think I had taken hormones. So, today I'll take a topic from CLOA, from cognitive. And the same thing I'll explain to you with the help of a cognitive study, but to make it more explicit, I have put in the mark schemes also to show you exactly how they award you marks for a study based answer versus a concept based answer. If you're still not understanding what I'm referring to you here, I'll just give you an example quickly. You can see this question on the screen right now. This tells you describe one study in biases in thinking and decision making. What are they asking you to describe? The study. Are they asking you to describe the bias? No. Versus, look at this question, which is next. Describe how one bias in thinking and decision making influences behavior. Here, are they asking you to describe the study? No. They're asking you to describe the bias. So, these are two different questions and these are marked differently in the paper. So, what I have seen is across schools, this approach is taken, at least with schools I have come across, that for a given topic, say biases in thinking and decision making, one standard SAQ is prepared, and students are told that regardless of which question comes, no matter what the command term is, no matter you're being asked to describe a study or a concept, you have to write that same SAQ which you've prepared, which is not the right approach, which I'm going to show to you today. And I'm going to tell you why that's not the right approach. And before I begin with this, that standard question which keeps coming, does the command term matter? Let's address that quickly and put it out of the way. So does it matter whether they're asking us to describe, explain or outline in an SAQ? Most professors say no, it doesn't matter, and I agree with that. It doesn't matter, though I have touched upon slight differences in these command terms in past videos. But we all come to realize at one point that the command term doesn't matter. Rather, what I'm addressing here today, that is what matters. Are they asking me to describe the study or the concept? I have to take up a study. Regardless, I will have to cover a study in any SAQ. Doesn't mean if they're asking me to describe a concept, I don't have to describe the study. But how I have to describe the study, in how much detail especially, that varies across the questions. I have to cover both theory and concept or study in both the answers. That goes without saying. But the weightage that I have to give is different because it's going to be marked differently. So let's start understanding this. When it comes to a study based question, like you can see on your screen, this question was asked either in a 22 or a 23 paper. I don't remember exactly, but you can just check in your past papers. You can see in the mark scheme what is worth noting before anything else when they ask you a study type of question is what is written right below. That is what you should really be paying attention to. If a candidate addresses one bias in thinking and decision making but does not describe a study, award a maximum of 3 marks. Indirectly, this tells you that the study in this 9 marker is worth 6 marks. Because if you don't address a study at all, the maximum they are willing to give you, if you've written very nicely about the concept, but you haven't touched upon a study, they are willing you to give you 3. So what is remaining after 3 marks? 6 marks. The study here is worth 6 marks. That's number 1. Next thing what you need to notice, because it is a study based SAQ, they want you to give quite a few explicit details about the study, including the aim, research method, IVDV, controls, material, depending which type of study you're taking. If it's an experiment, the things which I've ticked, you have to cover those. You have to give the conclusion, You have to give standard features like sample, sampling technique. Now, what happens is in most schools, they tell you the studies you need to summarize as aim, procedure, results, conclusion, which is right. You have to do that. That's the organized way of doing it. But within that summary, from aims to conclusion, how many details are you going to give about the study? That depends on what they've asked you for. If they've asked you to describe a study, you need to give these many details. Like even if you're not explicitly pointing it out, this is the IV, this is the DV. You can write it that way even if you're not pointing it out. But make sure that those things are included. So you have to give that. Now versus this, as against this, if it was describe a cognitive bias and you were just using the study as a support, then you wouldn't be required to give all these details about the study. Then you had to give the study as briefly as possible, only as much as it supports the cognitive bias. I hope you're able to understand this right away. And if you can't, I'm going to write and show you anyways. So just have a little patience. I'll be writing the answers soon, or you could just skip the video a little. Okay, what I'll do is I'll indicate to you right now only which study I'm going to take. For cognitive bias, I'm going to take the study Alter and Oppenheimer. Many of you must have learned it as Alter et al. Why I'm taking that study is because across schools I've seen most of the students use this. I don't know about your school in particular, but whichever schools I've come across, Alter and Oppenheimer, the cognitive ease bias study seems to be the most popular one. So when it comes to Alter and Oppenheimer, it's an experiment. So the features which I have ticked, I will definitely cover when I'm writing about this study. And as far as the bias is concerned, cognitive ease bias and the theory on which it is based, system 1 and system 2 thinking, that I will be covering very, very briefly in this answer. Before I start writing this answer, I want you to look at how this scheme of marking is different from how they would mark a theory or concept based question. Now, unfortunately, at least I was not able to find in the past papers this exact question which I have written here. For this, I wasn't able to find a mark scheme because I don't think it has come in the past paper. So I have taken the mark scheme from a different question just to be able to show to you. I've taken it from schema question which comes very often, but I'll explain to you how they would mark for a bias question. If it is a theory based question, like the mark scheme which I've put, it is from describe schema theory. The study, you can see they haven't asked to describe with reference to a relevant study. Means they're just trying to say describe the theory and support it with a study. Study is only support. Now see how the mark scheme changes. If a candidate describes schema theory without reference to a study, give a maximum of 5 marks. Now you can see in that case, if you are not writing a study in the first case, you're getting only 3 marks maximum. Now if you don't write a study, you can get 5 marks maximum on the answer. So there the study was worth 6 marks. Now the study is worth 4 marks. There only you can understand that the importance of the study has reduced in this type of question. Secondly, if you see what they want you to describe, in the mark scheme, what are they looking out for? Now you can see they are not looking out for specific features of the study. So they are not looking out for aim, IV, DV, sample. They haven't asked for anything of that because their focus is not on the study. Rather, they want you to cover concepts which are relevant to the study. Now they are focusing, to the theory. So now they are focusing on the theory. So this is for schema theory, but instead of this, if it was cognitive bias, what they would be asking for is the schema, like there should be a bias. They would be looking for the name of the bias, how the bias influences thinking, and which system of thinking the bias is coming from, association of the bias with thinking. Means it would be all about the bias. It would be like I told you, I'm going to be taking Alter and Oppenheimer. In that, the bias which is there's the cognitive ease bias, which is related to system 1 thinking. So here that is what they are chiefly looking out for. They are not looking out for the study. You have to give the study, but you can see they've just suggested which studies could be covered. They are not saying that they're looking out for any particular features in the study. So this is where what your school advises you: aim, procedure, results, conclusion, give it as briefly as possible. This is where you can take that approach. So now I'm going to actually write these answers and show you how they are to be written, how they differ. You'll be able to see them. I'll upload these answers on my website also, and I'll link the PDF page in the description box and pinned comment below. So if you need for future reference, you can download. But right now, when you're watching this video, I strongly recommend that you don't watch it passively, or just because the answer is going to be available, you don't ignore your own activeness when you're watching this video. Be active, write your own answer. You can pause this video in between many times. Like, I'm going to tell you how you're supposed to be writing the answer. So whenever I give you a suggestion that this is how you should write, actually write for yourself, put a pause to the video, then on the video again, and match what you're writing. It does not have to be what I'm writing, but is it similar to, is it covering all those details that I am covering in my answer? So take an active approach to this video from now on. That will help you to learn well for the paper. If you're passive, you don't really write your answers, just looking at how I'm writing the answer, just watching passively is not going to help you to score in the exam. Okay, so now how I should cover a study based answer for bias in thinking and decision making. I just put up the question again. So this is the question which I'm going to answer. Regardless of which SAQ is asked to you, the study one or the theory one, you have to have an introduction which covers the concept. You have to have, I would suggest, a separate paragraph. Most teachers will suggest that, which covers the study. Regardless of in how much detail you're covering it, keep it to a separate paragraph. Like here, I'm just addressing the organization. So an introduction paragraph in which the theory or concept is explained, a study paragraph which just summarizes the study as needed, and a conclusion which links back the study to the initial introduction which was given. So that is the standard 3 paragraph format for an SAQ, which you can take for any SAQ. Also keep in sight that the word limit is maximum 400 words for an SAQ, maximum. Generally, you're able to cover within that. You don't need to literally count how many words that are there, though if you're preparing on a word processor, it becomes easy to count. You can do that occasionally just to make sure you're on track. But if you follow the guidelines which on the mark scheme which I'm going to suggest, very comfortably you'll be within 400 words only. So that is something you won't have to worry about. Let's begin with the introduction. In the introduction, because this is a study based question, I have to keep it very brief, but I want to cover what a bias is, what thinking and decision making is, what is system 1, system 2 thinking, and what is the cognitive ease bias, which is going to be addressed in Alter and Oppenheimer. So I always make this sort of a mental outline. These points I need to cover, and then only I start writing. Always we have to go from broad to narrow, from general to specific. So first I'll explain the broader concept. What's a bias, what's thinking, decision making, general. Then I'll narrow down, come to the specific bias, cognitive ease bias. Then I'll narrow down even further and come to the study. So before writing any answer, just take a moment, mentally just visualize the answer in front of you. Just make a quick bulleted list in your mind what you need to cover, then only start writing. Because if you start writing in a haste, then you have to go back and the organization also doesn't turn good. That's not a good approach to writing. So I've just told you which are the 4 points we need to cover in the introduction. So I strongly recommend you pause the video, write those 4 points for yourself, and then switch on the video again and just check whether you're writing similar to mine. It does not have to be exactly what I'm writing, but at least it should resemble what I'm writing here. In the sense, even you're covering the concepts accurately. Okay, so what we can say is a bias refers to, again, many of you might want to be more focused and you wouldn't want to give general definitions. That's a matter of writing style. So if you feel it's totally unnecessary to give any general definitions like bias, decision making, all, and directly want to come to cognitive ease bias, that's absolutely fine. Like, there's no issue at all in doing that. This is my preferred style of writing. So, a bias refers to an error in thinking, that is, in the processing of information. It influences both thinking and decision making, which is the process of choosing between alternatives. So here I have just defined all the concepts which are there in the question: bias, thinking, decision making. Now to make it increasingly specific to what I want to address. So talking about system 1 and system 2 thinking. Tversky and Kahneman, again optional, you don't want to give specific names, that's fine, it's not compulsory. So Tversky and Kahneman have discovered two types of thinking. That they refer to as system 1 and system 2 thinking respectively. Now if this was a theory based question, I would have really got into the details of these two types of thinking. Right now I'm just going to address each in one line. The former is quick, less effortful thinking, which is seen under time pressure or when an individual wishes to save cognitive effort. The latter is careful, effortful thinking, seen under more relaxed conditions when decisions are worth spending mental effort on. A bias that arises from the quick thinking done by system 1 is the cognitive ease bias. This involves taking to quick thinking when information available is easy to process. The influence of this bias in reducing the accuracy of taking decisions is demonstrated in a study by Alter and Oppenheim. I'll just address a few things before I get into the study. One, do we need to remember the name of the authors and the year in which the study was done? I strongly recommend remembering the name of the authors. Year, I will not insist that you remember. Although both are optional, you don't want to remember the name of the researchers also, it is fine. But I just feel that it makes it easier for the examiner to go about checking the paper once they know which study you're talking about. Secondly, if you feel that even this is excessive, though I've tried to keep it very brief, you can omit what I have said initially. The general definitions, if it's that not in your style to give general definitions, you can skip it. Not important. So that way, this introduction will get narrowed down further. You have to remember this introduction and perhaps the conclusion is totally worth 3 marks. So if you feel this is excessive for 3 marks, you can condense it. What we're going to write next, the study, that is going to be worth 6 marks or majority of marks. What I have done in this introduction, just to reiterate, first I've generally described concepts. Then I have introduced system 1, system 2 thinking very briefly because it's directly related to what we are going to see in this study. The bias that we are talking about, after all, they want one study of a bias. That bias is contingent on these two systems of thinking. So it's important to define them. And then I have, without emphasizing more on these two systems of thinking, I have quickly connected to the bias. I've explicitly named the bias that I'm going to talk about. Many students, they beat around the bush, like they will describe system 1, system 2, describe the study, everything. In the end, they mention what's the bias, so they don't even mention. When they're asking you in a question, one bias in thinking and decision making which influences one behavior, please identify the bias, clearly, explicitly name that this is the bias. Also, explicitly name the behavior, how it is getting influenced by this bias before you write anything about the study. That is called signposting, and it's very, very clear, organized way of writing. Now, this bias, which behavior it's influencing, you can see I have defined the bias as such. Of course, that's important. And then I've quickly referred to the behavior which is being influenced. The accuracy of taking decisions, that is being influenced by this bias. So I've identified that also very directly. Now I will write about the study. Keep that mark scheme in your mind when we are writing what we had seen in the mark scheme. We need to cover aim, IVDV. Make sure you're covering all these features. Okay, so I'll show you how we should cover these features. As I said, you don't need to explicitly mention. Again, it comes down to writing style. Your style might be to point out. Alter and Oppenheimer, they used a research method of experiment. You might want to use the words research method. So research method, experiment. In that, their independent variable was fluency. So you might go about that way, or without using the words research method, independent variable, and so forth. Without those also, you can just make sure that you mention. So I would say Alton Oppenheimer conducted an experiment. I'm not saying explicitly this is the research method, but I've named it. So that way it is there. That's the approach I'm going to take. So again, I would suggest you pause the video here, write a summary of the study, keeping in mind what I had shown earlier in the mark scheme. Make sure to cover all that. AIM, IVDV, whatever you have learned. Then start the video again and see whether your answer is resembling mine or not. Okay, so how I would write is, these researchers conducted a true experiment to investigate how fluency of information would trigger the cognitive ease bias in making decisions related to simple mathematics and logic. So here I have done two things. I have covered the research method also, which was experiment. I have also covered the aim of the study, and as you must have noticed in the mark scheme, the aim has to be covered with reference to the bias. So in the aim, I have mentioned that they are looking out for this bias only, but aim has to be specific to a study. So again, what I've said in the previous paragraph, I just can't simply repeat that. So in their case, they are relating cognitive ease bias with fluency of information. I've mentioned that also. And what sort of problems they are giving them to solve in this study, like for what type of problems they have to make decisions, I've mentioned that also, just to narrow it down to the study which is there. If you're not able to relate to all of this, perhaps you are not very familiar with Alter and Oppenheimer study. It's beyond the scope of this video for me to explain the study to you first. So if you feel a need, just go through that study first in whichever resource you're referring to, and then start watching this video again. Okay, so experiment was there. Now we know it's an experiment. We should give the IVDV. The IV is, they've manipulated the font. They've manipulated the fluency. So we can write that. Again, I won't use the word IV, but I'll just point out. Researchers manipulated. When I say manipulated, it's understood. I'm talking about IV. fluency of the font in which some word problems were presented to participants. Half the participants received the problems in fluent, easy to read font, which was written in 12-point black color. The other half received the same problems in disfluent, difficult to read font, which was written in 10-point italic grey color. So here what I've done with this sentence, I've pointed out what was manipulated. Means I have pointed out what is the independent variable. Also, I have pointed out the experimental design because I have shown that these are two different groups. It's understood it's independent measures design. I would just like to mention it also once. Thus, using an independent measures design, I'll add one more feature here. Participants were randomly allocated to the fluent or disfluent conditions. Okay, also not mentioned in the mark scheme, but it's understood when it comes to an experiment, there is going to be a hypothesis. So I would like to suggest what the researchers were expecting. What was their prediction? It was hypothesized that when presented with the fluent font, which is easy to process, or you can say think about. If you find terminology is becoming too much jargon for you to remember, you can use simple terms, which is easy to think about, though it is preferable to use some enhanced terminology. Okay, participants would use system 1 thinking, as it enables quick processing. Conversely, when presented with this fluent font, they would use system 2 thinking, as it would enable slow and careful processing. So here I have given the hypothesis feature of an experiment, and I have also given like a directional hypothesis. They had something specific that they were expecting, and I have mentioned that. Coming to who were the participants in the study, what was the material used? Material as such, it's understood there must be just some sheets of paper on which they were presented problems. So in material, instead of talking about sheets of paper, that would be a little generic. I can give an example of what problem was presented to them. That would be better. Like on the sheet of paper, which problem is given, that would be more relevant to the study. So I'll give that. As far as participants are concerned, there were some 40 Princeton students. Now, one thing you will note in the mark scheme is they have explicitly mentioned sample size, like those sort of details are not required. Like even if you don't remember the which university they belong to, even that is fine. What you need to remember is very broadly, were they students, employees, people from general population, like say unemployed, or just a very general description of the participants. That's what you need to give. Also, sampling technique, unless it has some very good bearing on the study, which is generally the case for ERQs, you don't need to mention. Like in this case, it must definitely be an opportunity convenient sample because students from the same university as the researchers. But I don't need to mention that because it won't really add anything here, and I don't want to evaluate that feature given that it is an SAQ. So you need to decide for yourself what you find important. There's no very hard and fast rule that this is really to be given, that is not to be given. Whatever you feel makes the flow of your answer better. So I would say the participants were 40 Princeton students. Also, one more thing you need to note in the mark scheme is they have asked you, they have said these are the features that you have to cover. I'll just show you again. But they've not told you have to cover each and every feature. Also, they're saying you're not limited to these features in the sense that you can give anything up over and above what is given here also. For example, they haven't asked for the hypothesis, but I have given because I found that it was relevant. So I am allowed to exceed what is given here. If I want to give a few controls or something, I can give that also. And also they are saying information relevant to the description includes this, relevant to the description. So again, they are not saying you have to only cover each and every, otherwise they would have said that it should mention each of these. Relevant to, so what they mean is what is most important to this study. Means what I'm trying to say is you can give some of the features or most of these features, you don't have to only give all of them. Right now I'm demonstrating to you, so I'm trying to include as much as possible. When you write your answer, one or two of these features is not, that's okay. But just how you can think about it is this is an experiment. What are the key things in experiment? That's why it's so important to know your research methods well. What are the key things in experiment? IVDV, right? What is being manipulated, what is being measured. So make sure that definitely has to be. Remaining things, hypothesis, standardization, control, those are considered to be additional features of experiment, not the very defining features. So those you can compromise a little if you feel you're not able to bring them about. Although when you're preparing your answer, you should just make sure you know everything about the study. But in case you're missing one or two of these features, that is fine. Okay, so these were the participants coming to the material. They received the problems to be solved on sheets of paper. An example of a problem given to them was a bat and ball together cost $1.05. Okay, 1 minute. I just need to rectify this. $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does each cost separately? Okay, now students ask me, do we need to memorize this question verbatim? Yes, I strongly recommend you be able to write it well if you memorize it verbatim. So just one question you can prepare. After all, psychology preparation is what? What is the study time you're giving for psychology? Like when you're making your notes or your answers, you're preparing them from the IB. For the IB, what are you doing? A bit of memorization will come. Don't be very, very fearful of memorizing things. They're not as difficult as you make them out to be when you overthink about them. So it's easy to remember this question, just memorize it. After all, you'll be narrowing down, which is that one study you want to cover in this topic. So it's not like you are having to learn multiple studies for a topic. So for a given study, if you have to put a little effort and memorize one or two things, that should be fine. Other places, they're being relaxed anyways, like they're not insisting on the sample size or the year of the study. So something that's very key, like which really helps to understand what sort of task participants were doing in this study, that definitely you can put the effort to memorize. When we come to the next answer, which is about the bias rather than the study, I'll show you how we won't get into details like these. So there you'll be able to see the contrast. Okay, so then I've covered the material also. There is a mention in most places that Alter and Oppenheimer has a task which is identical to CRT, cognitive reflection tests. So yes, we can mention that also. Since it's a study-based question, we can memorize what sort of a test is this called. So we can say these are problems found on CRT And always when we use an acronym, we must give the full form. You cannot assume the examiner to know everything. So these are problems found in the cognitive reflection tests, which are tests involving cognitively effortful problems which are not inherently difficult but need to be thought about carefully while answering. So we are saying this is a test of those type of questions which require quite a bit of thinking. It's not like people can't come up with the answer. So the numbers are not very huge or difficult mathematical operations are not there that only mathematics students will be able to solve. So in that sense, it's fine. But the problem here is that not about thinking. It's about we need to think carefully. We can come to the answer provided we think carefully. So that is the type of test it is, and very relevant to cognitive ease bias, therefore. Because in cognitive ease bias, we're talking about people are going to think quickly or slowly. We are not interested in whether they have the ability to solve the problem or not. That is a given. Okay, then you can see I'm following that format only. As I had mentioned before, though there are a lot of details in this, I have given the aim of the study, then I have given the procedure up to you. Now I'll come to the results. So standard aim, procedure, results, conclusion. The only thing you'll be able to contrast it with is here the procedure is in great detail, which I will not do in the next answer. Okay, so we will say as hypothesized. Again, you don't need to memorize specific results, like exact numbers you don't need to remember. If you do, good. If you don't, that's fine. So as hypothesized, results showed that out of 3 questions asked, those in the fluent condition answered. Okay, I'm giving the exact figures. Like I said, if you don't remember exactly, that's fine. If you do mention it. 10% of those in the fluent condition answered all 3 correctly, as compared to 65% of those in the disfluent condition. Okay, now students tell me by the end of 2 years they have, I don't know, they calculate like 60, 65 studies to remember, which surprises me because in many schools, overlapping studies are not used. Like there are so many studies which are overlapping between, say, a year 2 syllabus like relationships and year 1 syllabus biological, or in the same year itself. Like biological, you can use only one study like Maguire or Dragansky for so many answers, which are then biological. But what their schools tend to do is they take a different study, like one different study for every topic. So students calculate and tell me we have like 65, 70 studies to remember at the end of 2 years. That might be the case with you. So then they tell me results are very difficult to remember for each and every study. I agree. No doubt, like, when you keep on writing as such, it should be easy to remember. But if it's like 65, 70 studies, you must be getting confused. So one thing which I'm digressing a little from what we are doing, try to make your answers economical. There are a lot of online resources also, like Professor Travis, excellent resources. He's prepared for IB psychology. Even in thinking, they have really discussed these things on how you can cut short on studies by using the same studies to answer multiple questions. So do refer to those things. Have an economy in how many studies you're remembering, if that helps you to remember some details better. Like here, undoubtedly, like I told you in this SAQ type, if you don't remember exact results and all, it's fine. So anyways, for that purpose, you don't need to economize on the studies, but you can just economize, try not to have 65 studies to remember, because you might get very confused, in my opinion. Like for one question, if you are having to think of which out of the 65 was there for this one, you might get very anxious at the time of the paper. Also for ERQs, sometimes it can be important. Like let's assume you're not doing ERQs for cognitive. So okay, the results you don't know exactly, fine. But maybe for an ERQ, there is something in the result of the sample that you want to discuss in your evaluation. Like you want to talk about generalizability. So then you need to make some reference to like concrete results or sample sizes to really make your point effective in evaluation. Again, I've discussed ERQs in other videos. You can watch those videos. So there, if you can economize on the studies, it will help you to better write ERQs. As of now, as if you're just taking for SAQs, it's fine if you don't remember exact details. Okay, coming to the next thing, I've given the results of the study also. Coming to the conclusion. Again, students will ask me at this point, here what conclusion do we give? Is it the same, like is it the final conclusion? I like to think of it as there are two conclusions in your SAQ. One is a study specific conclusion, and one is the conclusion, a separate one, in which you link back to the introduction. You link the study back to the introduction. So in my view, there are two different conclusions. Again, it's on writing style, but that helps in the 3-paragraph format which I mentioned earlier. So here I'll conclude of the study, and in the next paragraph I will write the final conclusion for the answer, in which I will link back this Alter and Oppenheimer study to what I had written initially about cognitive ease bias and system 1 thinking. So here I'll say, in conclusion, it was demonstrated how the cognitive ease bias encourages quick processing of information, thereby reducing accuracy in solving logical mathematical decision making problems. More or less, it covers the aim only. Like I'm trying to say in the conclusion that what was aimed for, that was demonstrated in the study. Now coming to the final conclusion, in which I link back the study that I've described to the introduction. So here I can say, in sum, the study by Alter and Oppenheimer showcased how presentation of information in terms of fluent font, that is easy to process presentation, triggers cognitive ease bias, which is a form of system 1 thinking. This in turn does make information quick to think about, but at the same time reduces the accuracy of the decisions made. In contrast, use of system 2 thinking in information presented not as easily as in the disfluent condition in this study helps avoid biases. This underscores the importance of presentation of information in decision making context. Again, if you want, you can reduce the conclusion a little just to make it as explicit as possible. I've spoken about system 2 thinking also. You can skip this part altogether. I just wanted to link everything in the introduction into the conclusion. If you want to make it brief, you can just include what is there in the introduction about system 1 thinking and cognitive ease bias strictly and skip the rest of it. What I have done in the conclusion is I've interwoven features from Alter and Oppenheimer and shown exactly what I had written in the introduction, system 1, cognitive ease bias and all, where it was seen in the study and how these features of the study are supporting those concepts which I had mentioned initially. That is what is known as linking back. For example, initially I spoke about triggering of cognitive ease bias with easy presentation of information. So I've presented, like linked that in this study it is the fluent font which is the easy to read information or the easy presentation. So whatever I had given in the introduction, I'm just showcasing in the conclusion, this is where this it was found in the study. Or for example, where cognitive ease bias was found when it comes to fluent font, or where time was being saved in the decisions that were being made, in the logical mathematical decisions that were being made. So I just keep on connecting every feature of the study to what I'd introduced initially. That is known as linking back. So when it comes to a study based answer, I just want you to see how maximum of my writing has gone into the study itself. So when you look at it, if you just take a glance at this answer from an examiner's perspective, like keep yourself in place of the examiner, you immediately know when you look at the answer that it is addressing the question which is given, because you can see clearly the whole effort is into describing the study. No doubt it has to be related with the bias, but the majority of effort has gone into bringing about every detail possible of the study. I know my answer is a little long compared to standard SAQ. That's why in beginning only I mentioned your SAQ needs to be maximum 400 words. Don't worry about word count, because after all you're not going to memorize my answer and write, right? If you can't remember 65 studies, how many ever SAQs, ERQs are there, are you going to memorize each one and write? Of course not. So when you're writing, inevitably when we learn something, like you're not memorizing what I'm writing, but when you're learning from this, when you go to write, inevitably we tend to cut short. So as a teacher, when I'm presenting in the video, I do present a little lengthy answers, because I know if I really bring down to precisely how much I would have written, you would write even shorter than that. So I don't want to encourage that. Plus, I have kept on pointing out to you where you can cut down on features. So if you want to know exactly how to reduce your answer, if it's not automatically coming down when you're writing, I have explained that also to you. So right now, looking at it, it might seem very lengthy, but my focus has been on how to write rather than what to write. So I hope you're able to take it in the right spirit. Now, in the same answer, how we would write when it comes to referring to the theory or the concept of cognitive bias rather than the study. Now I will show you that. Okay, so the next question is, now look at the wording of the question. Describe how one bias in thinking and decision making influences human behavior with reference to one study. What are they asking you to describe? The bias. Are they asking you to describe the study? No. What are they asking you to do with the study? Refer to it. Use it as a reference. So just keep it in mind. I'm just trying to drive the point home. So even if it seems repetitive, I just want to bring your focus to it again and again. Okay, here the introduction would be similarly beginning like I have written the previous. So I'm just copy pasting from there. What is a bias? What is thinking, decision making, and who are the ones who gave system 1 and system 2 thinking? So this much I can take the same as the previous answer. Then I would talk about system 1 thinking, again not too much, because after all the answer is on bias, not on the two types of thinking, but little more at leisure compared to what I had explained in the previous answer, because there I just wanted to leave room for the study. So system 1 thinking is fast, automatic, intuitive, and intuitive. It requires minimal cognitive effort but is highly prone to cognitive errors and biases. This is because it prioritizes speed over accuracy. In contrast, system 2 thinking is slow, deliberate, and analytical. It engages in careful processing of information and thereby avoids errors or biases in thinking. Okay, so little bit more you can contrast with the previous, and that's why I'm going to upload the answer also so that you can contrast and see. Little bit more I have explained here, system 1 and system 2 thinking than I did in the previous, but again, not general points about these systems which relate with bias, which show that how system 1 rather than system 2 is involved in bias. So I'm not lost focus of what is being asked in the question. So you don't get carried away just because you've learned system 1, system 2 in great detail for the other topic which is there, doesn't mean that you get carried away and lose sight of the question. Okay, then coming to the bias, I like to still keep it into a 3-paragraph format, but if you want, you can take a separate paragraph to start talking about the bias. So, one bias stemming from system 1 thinking is cognitive ease bias. Now, in the previous answer, I had explained it very briefly and just quickly connected it in one line only to reduced accuracy in decision making. Here, I'll give a little more time to explain what this bias is, because the question is focused on the bias and how it influences behavior. So, the way exactly in which it reduces accuracy of decision making. This I need to spend more time on, talk more about before entering into the study. So, cognitive ease bias, it occurs when thinking is influenced by ease of processing information. So information presented in a way that is easy to understand triggers this bias, increasing likelihood of errors in decision making. Conversely, information presented in a difficult to understand way prevents this bias, decreasing the likelihood of making errors and increasing accuracy in decision making. Okay, so here you can see in more detail I have explained exactly what this bias has to do with the way information is presented and how it gets triggered off by the way information is presented. The question is how one bias influences behavior. So I'm explaining how. So firstly, how does it get triggered? Now I'll explain once it gets triggered what it does. So next I can explain. Yeah, we can say cognitive ease bias is observed in those situations in which reasoning tasks can involve seemingly obvious answers but are deceptively simple. Means I'm trying to say that answers might be easy to reach to, but they require some thinking, as we had seen in Alter and Oppenheimer study. Here I don't have to say in the context of the study, I have to say generally. So without referring to the study as of now, I'm just explaining in general what is happening when this bias is triggered. So this is triggered when the answer seems obvious, but it's actually deceptive, requires deeper processing. It will not allow that deeper processing or will not allow that deeper reasoning. That is how it is influencing decision making. In such cases, it uh, prevents deeper reasoning as it, we can say, jumps to or encourages thinking to quickly reach to a decision without having to put the effort of thinking through for a while. Okay, so exactly what is it doing? How is it coming to play? Because the answer looks deceptively simple. The problem looks like it has a very obvious answer, like the bad ball problem which we had seen earlier. So it encourages the mind, don't put that effort, you don't need to think so much, just come to the answer. So they're saying how one bias influences behavior. So this is how it influences behavior. This is how it makes us take decisions quickly. I'm pointing that out. Okay, and then just to make it more clear exactly what it is doing, I can give the converse scenario. So conversely, when this bias is not used, in such situations, deeper thinking is used or deeper reasoning is used to think about possibly different answers than the ones that seem the most obvious. Okay, so this is, you can see in the previous answer, I had just given very brief on how the bias works, just about in 2-3 lines. Here you can see I've explained exactly what the bias is doing to the mind and how it is encouraging a sort of quick decision making. Okay, so this is what is required in this type of an answer. Now coming to relating it with the study and covering the study briefly, how we need to address the study now. We just have to refer to it. Another way you can think about it is you've really explained the concept of the bias in the introduction, and now you're just illustrating it or demonstrating it that, whatever you've said so far, what are examples of difficult presentation, easy presentation that you're doing with the help of the study. So you can think of it that way also. This process of how the bias influences thinking is demonstrated in the study by Alter and Oppenheimer. The aim of this study was to investigate how cognitive ease bias can influence the solving of simple logical mathematical problems. Participants were made to solve 3 questions. In either a condition in which the problems were written in fluent, that is easy to process font, or difficult, disfluent, that is difficult to process font. Okay, I hope that you're able to see now how I'm glossing over certain details in this answer. Like, in the sense, you must be able to see how I'm not really getting into very technical details like I had done in the previous. So, first of all, you must have seen I've not specified how many participants are there. Again, when it is coming to the problems, I'm not giving any sample problem, wording of the problem, nothing. I'm also not getting into how the font was fluent or disfluent, like exactly what is the font size, which font family was used to write, or whether it was in italics so it was standing straight. I'm not getting into any of those details. I'm just mentioning that these were 2 different conditions. Okay, results revealed that a very few of the participants in the fluent condition were able to solve all 3 problems correctly, indicating less accuracy and greater errors. Conversely, a majority of the participants in the disfluent condition were able to solve all three problems correctly, indicating greater accuracy and lesser errors. Okay, here also, because I know the percentages, I could have written 10 and 65%, but I just want to give you an example of how you can avoid writing the percentages. So if you don't remember the exact percentages or means in the result of a study, this is how you can present the numbers. It was concluded that the fluent condition triggered system 1 thinking, and thereby the cognitive ease bias, resulting in more errors, whereas the disfluent condition triggered system 2 thinking, resulting in deeper thinking and lesser errors and greater accuracy. So you can see how briefly I have covered this study. Some of you may be surprised to see that hardly anything I have written in the study, because many of your schools would say that study has to be in great details. But now I hope you can see that that is not regardless of the question, that no matter which question has been asked, you have to only give all sorts of details. This is how you can cover it, as brief as this, as little as this, if the study is not the focus, if it is the theory. There can be a little more details than this. I told you it comes to writing style, but deliberately I have done this to show you how minimum you can keep it and still score very well in the paper. Okay, the conclusion has to be in the same way as for the previous answer. So I'll just copy paste it here and see if we need to make any modifications. I don't think we need to make any modifications. I have just posted the conclusion exactly as I had done for the previous answer. Okay, so I know for many of you, it must be the first time that you've come across this distinction between the two types of answers. So maybe some things are still not very clear to you. I've tried to be as clear as possible in explaining, but if still it's not clear to you, I will strongly recommend you take the time to go through the answers that I'm uploading. These same answers I'm uploading, actually read through them and for yourself see what is the difference between the two types of answers. These are like two model answers. Model answers are never to be rote learned or memorized. They're always to be learned from. So whenever you have a model answer in front of you, my answer or any other professor's answer, just analyze it, how it has been written, how it has been structured, what content has been covered. Not exactly what's written, but out of all the content available, which has been covered in the answer. Ignore superficiality such as word count and all that anyways comes into place. Focus more on the style of writing, organization. As I said, what has been covered, what has been ignored, because you saw that's critical. What you're covering from the study is differing based on it's a study based or theory based answer. So focus on those, we can say, important parts of the answer rather than superficialities of word count or with study. Like many students also get into, this one would be better like Alter and Oppenheimer, or should it be English and Moschelweier? Which one's going to be better? Or Tversky and Kahneman, say framing effect or something. Doesn't matter. All studies are equally good. All biases are equally good to cover. What matters is the way you're writing, the way you're making your points. So look out for those things in an answer. Okay, and I have made such a video previously also, so even that can help you to learn better. In that, I've covered a hormone study. I'll link that also in the description box below. If you have any feedback on this video, any comments you want to make, or any questions you want to ask, you can leave it in the comments box of this video itself. I will answer. If you have any queries for tuition, yes, I take tuition. If you want to take one-to-one private tuition from me, you can contact me. I'm giving my WhatsApp number and my email ID below. That is only for tuition query. Whatever I've taught you in this video, if you want to be able to apply that to more of your answers, and especially if you need customized feedback, how you're writing your answers, you need someone to evaluate it and tell you how to improve, give you a customized plan for how and where you need to improve. That's what I do in tuition. So I know videos are good, but they can help you only to the extent of getting some general advice, like I have given you today. But when you want personal, customized feedback, you want to excel in your IB psychology exam, you need to have one-to-one classes, which you can schedule with me. Okay, so that's all I have for today, and I'll try to come back with another video soon. And yeah, keep preparing well. I know it seems like there is time. The exams must be in May this year at the earliest, but continuous, sincere, focused practice in psychology is the key. So don't leave it for the last minute. If you haven't already, start preparing from now itself to be able to do well in your May exams. So all the best for your preparation, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.